In this video, I'm going to show you the string bowing techniques and other extended techniques. You'll learn what pizzicato means, the two methods of playing string harmonics, and what happens when you try to play with the wrong side of the bow. Excitingly, all of the techniques are demonstrated live by an amazing young violinist, Ziana Harron. There are many different ways that a string player can bow their instrument, and each way creates a slightly different tone. Learning these bowing techniques will help you find new textures to exploit in your compositions. You can use bowing directions to your advantage. Say you want a more aggressive, slightly more powerful sound for each note. You could instruct the players to use down bowing, which is naturally more powerful than an up bow, to get that effect. There are also a few ways to tell string players which part of the bow to use. You could write WB for whole bow, MB for middle bow, UH for upper half, or LH for lower half. Some more terms indicate bow placement are testa or punta d'arco, which is to play with the very tip of the bow and it creates a very thin, light sound. Tallone, meaning to play by the frog of the bow and gives a slightly cumbersome, powerful sound. Both of those terms are to do with the whereabouts on the bow the player should play, but you can also change the tone of string instruments by changing where on the string the bow is placed. Sul tasto means to play the bow higher up the string over the fingerboard and gives a softer, less bodied sound. Sometimes this is referred to as flautando, as it's closer to the tone of a flute. The opposite of sul tasto is sul ponticello, which means to play closer to the bridge of the instrument. This gives a glassy, scratchy sound, which can actually be really unpleasant if not performed well. And finally, not quite a bowing technique, but it is something that affects the tone of a string instrument, and that's con sordino, or with mute. String instruments are designed to resonate. They have big, hollow bodies with those F-holes that amplify that vibration out. The mute clips onto the bridge and prevents it from vibrating so much, but it also changes the tone of the instrument, giving it a darker sound with less harmonics or upper frequencies ringing through. There's a great example of mute in Sibelius's Tapiola, where the string players each remove their mutes one by one while holding a tremolo on one note, so the texture just slowly changes over time. This final section on techniques groups together a few of the more string-specific techniques that didn't really fit so well into the more specific categories. Let's start with spiccato. Spiccato is a very short sound, much like staccato, but the main thing that differentiates it is that between each note the bow should bounce off the string, whereas for staccato the bow should remain on the string. A kind of extreme version of spiccato is ricochet or jeté bowing. This is where you literally let the bow ricochet or bounce multiple times off the string in the same bowing direction. Pizzicato, or pizz for short, is where the string is plucked rather than bowed. There's also an extreme version of pizzicato called either snap pizz or the Bartok pizz, named after the composer most famously associated with it. You might have heard harmonics played on the guitar, where the guitarist lightly touches the string while plucking a note and it creates a beautiful, high-pitched ringing sound. Well, harmonics are also a feature of our string instruments, but they don't always sound pretty. The natural way is just like the guitar. You lightly touch the string while bowing. An artificial harmonic is created when the player stops a note, so they press firmly down on the string as if to play it normally, and then with a second finger they touch the string very lightly a fourth above the note, which creates a sound 2 octaves above the original stopped note. Another technique you may want to consider is sul G, or sul whatever string you want. This means that all of the notes should be played on only one string. Okay, now something that can be a bit confusing: trills and tremolo. By definition, a tremolo is a trembling sound. A single note tremolo on a string instrument is where the player bows very quickly back and forth to create that trembling sound. The second form of a tremolo is the fingered tremolo, where the player alternates between two notes in a single bow stroke, not the fast back and forth bowing as in a bowed tremolo. This is where the overlap with trill comes in, and where there's some confusion. A trill is also the rapid movement between two notes, usually the note a half or full tone above the written note. Next up is bariolage, which is possibly one of the more impressive sounding techniques, as it sounds like a lot of notes being played very quickly. It's actually more of a bowing technique than a fast finger technique. Usually using an open string as a root, the bow moves quickly across a number of strings, giving a fast arpeggiated sound. Collé is a really great technique for adding a percussive texture to your parts. There are two forms of collé, but normally if you don't specify which, it's assumed to be collé battuto, which is where the player turns the bow upside down and literally hits the strings with the wooden part of the bow. The other form of collé is collé tratto, which is where the strings are bowed with the wooden side of the bow. Our final two techniques are kind of traditional and modern equivalents of each other: collé and chopping, or chunking as it's sometimes called. This is where the bow quickly lands on the string and then kind of chips away, giving a short, gritty, quite percussive sound. In collé, the traditional method, the note itself is a little more pronounced, whereas in chopping, sometimes the note is completely muted and you just get a percussive wood chopping kind of sound, as the name implies. Thanks for watching. If this video helped you, please give it a thumbs up and don't forget to hit the big red subscribe button for more music composition, production and industry tips. If you want to learn more about the string section, sign up to my free email video course by following the link in the description. And finally, let me know what else you'd like to learn about by leaving me a comment.